They said Adrian Moretti could buy anything he wanted. That was true until the last night of the year, when the most powerful man in New York stood alone in the snow with nowhere to sit. I remember the cold first. It cut through my wool coat like a warning. Midnight was less than an hour away. The city glowed gold and silver. Taxis honked. Couples hurried past me with laughter in their voices and champagne in their hands. Everyone seemed to belong to someone. Everyone except me. The maître d' at Le Jardin had gone pale when he recognized me. His hands shook as he adjusted his black tie. "I'm sorry, Mr. Moretti," he said. "We're completely booked." He looked terrified, as if he expected me to argue. I didn't. I simply nodded. That surprised him more than anger ever could. Because the truth was, I was too tired to care. Too tired to remind anyone who I was. Too tired to pretend that owning half the skyline meant I had a place in it. My driver waited at the curb beside a black Cadillac worth more than most people's homes. My security team stood a few feet away, silent and alert. Men who would follow me anywhere. Men who trusted me with their lives. And still, on the one night meant for celebration, I felt like the loneliest man in America. Snow settled on my shoulders. The flakes melted against the leather of my gloves. Across the restaurant windows, I saw reflections of crystal chandeliers, candlelight, and families leaning closer to hear one another over the music. I could have bought the restaurant. I could have bought the entire block. But there was one thing money had never been able to reserve for me. A seat at someone's table. I turned to leave. Then I heard a child's laugh. Bright. Unfiltered. Real. I looked back through the glass and saw a woman near the window. Her coat was simple. Her hair was loosely pinned, a few strands falling against her cheek. Nothing about her suggested wealth, but she had something rarer. Warmth. A little boy sat beside her, swinging his legs beneath the table, grinning as if this modest dinner were the greatest night of his life. The woman glanced toward the entrance. Our eyes met. She studied me for only a second. Not with fear, not with curiosity, just kindness. Then she lifted her hand and pointed to the empty chair at her table. One small gesture, one impossible invitation. And in that moment, standing beneath the falling snow while the countdown to midnight echoed through the city, I had no idea that the woman named Claire Bennett was about to change everything. I should have said no. That was my first thought when I stepped toward Claire Bennett's table. Men like me did not sit with strangers. We were surrounded by them, protected from them, and feared by them, but we never truly joined them. Yet something in her eyes made refusal feel impossible. "Please," she said, as if offering a seat to a man standing in the snow was the most natural thing in the world. "No one should be alone tonight." Her voice was soft, but it landed harder than any demand I had heard in years. I took off my gloves and slid into the empty chair. The little boy across from me looked up with wide blue eyes and a paper crown tilted sideways on his blonde hair. "I am Noah," he said proudly. "I am 6.5. I smiled before I could stop myself. "Adrian," I replied. "And I am considerably older than 6.5. Noah laughed so loudly that two people at the next table turned to look. Claire's cheeks flushed pink. "I am sorry," she said. "He likes meeting new people." "That makes one of us," I said. She studied me for a moment, sensing the truth beneath the joke. Up close, she was even more striking. Not because she wore diamonds or designer labels. She wore a simple navy dress and a silver necklace that had been polished so often it caught the candlelight like something precious. She looked like a woman who had learned to make ordinary things feel special. On the table sat one plate of chicken tenders, one small bowl of fries, and a slice of chocolate cake with 2 forks. It was not much, but it was enough. Noah pushed the fries toward me. "You can have some?" he said. "Mom says food tastes better when you share it." I had signed contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I had shaken hands with men who controlled banks, buildings, and elections. Yet no offer had ever felt as sincere as a 6-year-old boy giving me his fries. I took one. "Your mother is a smart woman." Claire laughed quietly. The sound was warm, like a light left on in a dark house. "We are celebrating," she said. This was Noah's idea. Noah sat up straight. We made a list of all the good things that happened this year. He held up a folded sheet of notebook paper covered in large, uneven letters. "Mom got a better job. I learned to ride my bike. And we did not give up." The last words caught in my chest. We did not give up. Such a simple sentence. Such an extraordinary achievement. Claire looked down, almost embarrassed by the truth. "Some years are harder than others," she said. I understood more than she knew. As the waiter poured sparkling cider for Noah and champagne for the adults, I realized something unsettling. For the first time in years, no one at this table wanted anything from me except my company. And that was precisely what made me want to stay. There are dinners you forget before the check arrives. And there are dinners that divide your life into before and after. This was the second kind. Noah talked with the fearless honesty that only children possess. He told me about his bicycle with the red streamers on the handlebars, the science project he wanted to build, and the stray cat outside their apartment building that he had named Captain Snow. Claire listened with a tired smile that never quite hid the love in her eyes. Every time Noah spoke, she looked at him as if he were proof that difficult years could still produce miracles. I found myself watching her more than the room around us. She cut Noah's chicken into smaller pieces without interrupting the conversation. She wiped a streak of chocolate from his cheek with her thumb. She made scarcity look like abundance. "What about you, Adrian?" Noah asked suddenly. "What was the best thing that happened to you this year?" The question should have been simple. For most people, it would have been, I could have mentioned a new office tower in Manhattan, a private jet, a penthouse overlooking Central Park. But none of those things had changed the way I felt when I woke up in the morning or when I returned home at night. I stared into the bubbles rising in my champagne. "I am not sure," I admitted. Noah frowned as if this answer was unacceptable. "There has to be one good thing." Claire gave him a gentle look. "Sometimes adults forget how to notice them." Her words were not judgmental. They were sad, as if she understood exactly how a person could become so busy surviving that life started to pass by unnoticed. I looked at the handwritten list in Noah's small hands. We did not give up. That single line carried more weight than every achievement engraved on the walls of my office. "Actually," I said, surprising myself, "I think I just found mine." Claire met my eyes. For a second, the music faded. The crystal glasses, the candlelight, the crowded room all seemed to dissolve. There was only the woman who had offered me an empty chair and the strange sense that I had been expected here all along. The band began counting down to midnight rehearsals. Waiters moved through the room with trays of sparkling wine. Outside, snow continued to fall in soft white sheets, covering the city in silence. Noah leaned closer. "Are you rich?" Claire's eyes widened. "Noah." "It is all right," I said, unable to stop smiling. "Some people think so." He considered this carefully. "Then why did you look sad when you were standing outside?" The question struck deeper than he could have known. Children never ask the polite question. They ask the true one. I opened my mouth, but no answer came. Because at 6 years old, Noah Bennett had seen what most adults never did. He had looked at a man who seemed to have everything and recognized the one thing he was missing. Some truths are too honest to answer right away. Noah's question lingered between us like the final note of a song. "Why did you look sad?" I had negotiated billion-dollar deals with less difficulty than it took to respond to a 6-year-old boy wearing a paper crown. I glanced at Claire. She was watching me with quiet understanding, not pressure. She did not rescue me with a different topic. She let the silence breathe. That, more than anything, made me trust her. "Because," I said slowly, "sometimes people spend so much time building a life that they forget to live in it." Noah considered this with the seriousness only children can summon. "That sounds lonely." I let out a breath I did not realize I was holding. "It can be." Noah reached across the table and placed his small hand over mine. His fingers were sticky from chocolate cake. "You can borrow us tonight," he said. Claire laughed, but her eyes shimmered in the candlelight. "That is Noah's way of saying you are welcome here." Welcome. Such a simple word. I could not remember the last time anyone had used it with me. In my world, doors opened because people were afraid to keep them closed. Respect was often indistinguishable from caution. But nothing about Claire felt cautious. She did not ask what I did for a living. She did not study my watch or the men stationed discreetly near the entrance. She looked at me the way one human being looks at another and decided that was enough. The band began a soft jazz rendition of Auld Lang Syne. Glasses clinked throughout the restaurant. The chandeliers scattered warm light over polished silverware and crystal flutes. Outside the tall windows, Times Square glowed like another universe. Inside, I felt something unfamiliar settling over me. Peace. Claire took a sip of champagne and smiled. Noah wanted tonight to feel fancy. Noah nodded enthusiastically. "Mom said we had enough for one special dinner if we shared dessert." He leaned toward me and lowered his voice. "She almost said no because she wanted to save the money." Claire shook her head, embarrassed. "I just wanted to be practical." "Mom is always practical," Noah said. "But I told her New Year's Eve only happens once a year." I looked at Claire and saw what sacrifice looked like in real life. Not dramatic, not loud, just a mother in a modest dress deciding that one magical memory was worth more than perfect financial planning. "Your son is a wise man," I said. Claire smiled, and for a moment the years of responsibility seemed to lift from her face. She looked younger, hopeful, beautiful in the most honest way. Then the waiter approached, carrying 3 fresh glasses and a silver tray of sparkling cider. 10 minutes to midnight," he announced. Around us, the room brightened with anticipation. Noah adjusted his paper crown and grinned. Claire tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. I should have felt like an outsider at their table. Instead, as the countdown to a new year drew closer, I felt something far more dangerous. I felt like I belonged. There are moments when the world grows quiet enough for you to hear what your heart has been trying to say for years. For me, that moment arrived 10 minutes before midnight, seated between a woman who had almost nothing and a child who shared everything. The band changed tempo. The room softened. Even the clinking glasses seemed to move in rhythm with the steady beat inside my chest. Noah sipped his sparkling cider and leaned against his mother's shoulder. Claire rested her cheek lightly against his hair, her fingers brushing his crown to straighten it. The gesture was so effortless, so instinctive, that it struck me harder than any grand display of affection ever could. This was what love looked like when no one was trying to impress anyone. Quiet, consistent, real. "What do you usually do on New Year's Eve?" Claire asked. Her voice was gentle, but I sensed genuine curiosity. Not because of my tailored suit or the black Cadillac outside, but because she wanted to know the person sitting beside her. I looked around the crowded restaurant. Usually, I attend parties I do not enjoy with people I do not trust. Claire smiled into her glass. "That sounds exhausting." "It is." Noah tilted his head. "Then why do you go?" I laughed softly. "Because after a while, you forget that you have a choice." The words surprised even me. Claire's expression changed. There was no pity in her eyes, only recognition. As if she understood what it meant to keep moving simply because stopping felt too risky. "I know that feeling," she said quietly. "After Noah's father left, I spent a long time doing whatever seemed safest, working extra shifts, counting every dollar, saying no to anything that felt unnecessary." She glanced at her son, then back at me. Tonight was the first time in a while that I said yes to something, just because it felt special. Her honesty settled over me like the falling snow outside. She was not trying to impress me either. She was simply telling the truth. And truth, I realized, was far more intimate than charm. Noah held up his empty glass. "I think this was the best New Year's Eve ever." Claire kissed his forehead. "Even better than last year when we watched fireworks from the couch." "Much better," he declared, "because this year we made a friend." Friend. The word was almost absurd in my world. Men called me boss, sir, and Mr. Moretti. They called when they needed favors, approvals, or protection. But no one had called me a friend in so long that the word felt unfamiliar. And yet, hearing Noah say it, I wanted to earn it. The lights dimmed slightly as the large screen above the bar switched to the countdown in Times Square. 10 minutes had become 5. The entire room buzzed with anticipation. People reached for hands, shoulders, and glasses. And for the first time in my life, I did not envy anyone in the room, because as Claire's fingers brushed mine beneath the table by accident, and neither of us pulled away right away, I understood something that changed me forever. The richest moment of my life was happening at a table I had never planned to sit at. Sometimes the happiest moments arrive seconds before everything changes. 5 minutes before midnight. Noah was teaching me how to fold a paper napkin into a rocket ship. Claire was laughing because my first attempt looked more like a crumpled receipt than a spacecraft. The restaurant sparkled around us. Crystal glasses reflected candlelight. The giant television over the bar showed the glowing ball in Times Square inching toward the top of its pole. The room was full of expectation. But beneath the warmth of that table, another part of my life had never stopped moving. I noticed it in the reflection of the window first. One of my security men, Vincent, stood near the entrance. He had worked for me for 12 years. He was a man who never interrupted me unless it mattered. He caught my eye and gave the smallest possible signal, a subtle touch to his cuff. To anyone else, it meant nothing. To me, it meant the world outside this table had found me again. My chest tightened. For one impossible hour, I had almost forgotten who I was. Claire noticed the change in my expression. "Is everything all right?" she asked. Her voice was calm, but her eyes sharpened with concern. I wanted to lie. I wanted to tell her that it was nothing, that the night could continue exactly as it had begun. But some moments demand honesty. "There are times," I said quietly, "when my life becomes complicated." Noah looked up from his napkin rocket. "Complicated like homework. Despite everything." I smiled. "Something like that." Vincent approached the table, his posture respectful. He leaned down and spoke in a low voice. "The car is ready whenever you are." The words were ordinary, but the urgency in his eyes was not. Claire glanced from Vincent to me. She did not look frightened. She looked disappointed, as if she already understood that the night was ending sooner than either of us wanted. I turned back to Noah. His small face had fallen. "Do you have to go?" he asked. I looked at the paper crown on his head, the crumbs of chocolate cake on the plate. The woman beside him who had treated me like a person instead of a title. "I was hoping to stay until midnight," I said. Noah brightened immediately. "Then stay." Claire placed her hand over his. "Sweetheart, Adrian has responsibilities." Noah frowned. "Everyone deserves one good night." The words settled over us in silence. Claire lowered her eyes, and I saw the same truth reflected there. She wanted me to stay too, not because of my suit or my car or the men waiting nearby, because somewhere between shared fries and honest questions, I had become important to them, and they had become something infinitely more dangerous to me. Important. The countdown clock above the bar shifted to 2 minutes. The entire room began to cheer. Claire looked at me, her fingers resting lightly on the table between us. "Whatever your life looks like outside these doors," she said softly, "so you do not have to be alone tonight." In all my years, no invitation had ever felt more powerful. There are invitations that change an evening, and there are invitations that change a life. Claire's words settled into me more deeply than she could have known. You do not have to be alone tonight. The countdown clock above the bar flashed 60 seconds. The entire restaurant rose to its feet. Chairs scraped softly across the polished floor. Couples moved closer. Parents lifted children into their arms. Noah grabbed one of my hands and his mother's with the other, linking us together as naturally as if we had always belonged that way. "Ready?" he asked, his blue eyes shining with excitement. I looked at our joined hands and felt something inside me shift. For years, I had measured time in meetings, acquisitions, and flights between cities. But standing there with Claire and Noah, 60 seconds felt more valuable than all of it. The room began counting. 59. 58. Claire's fingers tightened around mine. Her hand was warm and steady. I turned to her, in the soft glow of candlelight. She looked both strong and fragile. A woman who had carried more than her share, and still found the courage to smile at strangers. I wanted to tell her that she had given me more in 1 hour than most people had in a lifetime. I wanted to tell her that she had reminded me of the man I might have become if life had taken a gentler path. But there was no time for speeches. 30 seconds. Noah bounced on his toes. The paper crown slipped over one eyebrow. Claire laughed and fixed it. I watched them and felt an ache so profound it was almost beautiful. This was what home looked like. Not marble floors or skyline views. A mother, a child, and a hand that did not let go. 10 seconds. The restaurant erupted. Voices rose together. 10, 9, 8. Claire looked directly into my eyes. 7, 6. There was no fear in her expression, only trust. 5, 4. I realized, with startling clarity, that I did not want this night to end. 3, 2, 1. Midnight. The room exploded in cheers. Silver confetti drifted from the ceiling like snowfall. Horns sounded outside. Noah threw his arms around both of us. "Happy New Year!" he shouted. Claire turned to me, smiling with tears in her eyes. "Happy New Year, Adrian." I had heard those words from presidents, billionaires, and people who barely remembered my name the next day. But no greeting had ever felt this sincere. "Happy New Year, Claire." For a heartbeat, we stood inches apart while the world celebrated around us. I saw hope in her eyes. I saw the possibility of a future I had never dared imagine. Then Noah tugged my sleeve. "Make a wish," he said. I looked at Claire. I looked at the child, still holding both our hands. And for the first time in many years, I did not wish for power, influence, or success. I wished for one more night like this. Because somewhere between the falling snow and the stroke of midnight, I had stopped feeling like a man with everything and started feeling like a man who had finally found what mattered most. The most dangerous thing a man can do is imagine a different life. After midnight, the restaurant glowed with the soft chaos of celebration. Strangers embraced. Champagne sparkled in crystal glasses. Outside, fireworks painted the sky in silver and gold. But all I could see was Claire. Noah had fallen asleep against her shoulder. His paper crown tilted and his small hand still wrapped around 2 fingers of my own. Claire brushed his hair back with the tenderness of someone who had learned to carry the world without ever setting it down. "He never makes it to 12:30, she whispered. Her voice was low enough that it felt like a secret meant only for me. "He was determined tonight." "I am glad he stayed awake," I said. "So am I." Her answer was simple, but the way she looked at me made my chest tighten. It had been years since anyone looked at me as though my presence alone had improved their evening. No expectations, no hidden agenda, just quiet gratitude. I glanced toward the window. Snow continued to drift across Fifth Avenue, softening the edges of the city I had spent most of my life trying to control. For the first time, it occurred to me that control and happiness were not the same thing. Claire followed my gaze. "You seem far away." I turned back to her. Candlelight reflected in her eyes. I was thinking about how different tonight is from what I expected. She smiled faintly. "Mine too." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence was comfortable, like sitting beside a fireplace after a long winter. Then she asked the question no one ever asked me. "Were you always alone?" The honesty of it took my breath away. I looked down at Noah sleeping peacefully between us. "My mother died when I was young," I said. "After that, I became very good at making myself useful, successful, Important. I paused, searching for words I had never said aloud. But useful is not the same as loved. Claire's eyes filled with understanding, not pity, never pity. She reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. You deserved both. No boardroom victory, no signed contract, no standing ovation had ever struck me as deeply as those 3 words. You deserved both. The sentence unlocked something I had kept sealed for decades. I swallowed hard and looked away, afraid she might see just how much those words meant. But she had already seen. She always seemed to notice the truth beneath what I said. Noah stirred in his sleep and murmured, "Do not go yet." Claire and I both smiled. She looked at me, her expression open and sincere. "Neither of us has much planned tomorrow," she said softly. "Would you like to have breakfast with us?" Breakfast? Such an ordinary invitation. And yet it felt more intimate than any promise I had ever received. I looked at the woman who had offered me an empty chair and the child who had offered me his fries, and I understood that some people do not enter your life with noise. They enter with kindness so gentle that you only realize later that they have changed everything. "Yes," I said. And for the first time in years, the future sounded like something worth waking up for. A year can change a city. One night can change a man. 12 months after Claire Bennett waved me to her table, snow was falling over New York once again. The same restaurant windows glowed with candlelight. The same music drifted through the room. But everything else was different. I no longer measured my worth by buildings, contracts, or headlines. I measured it by Saturday mornings making pancakes with Noah, by the sound of Claire laughing in the kitchen. And by the way, our apartment felt smaller when they were not there. Noah was 7.5 now. He had lost 2 front teeth and gained a remarkable talent for asking impossible questions. Claire had left her second job months earlier. She spent evenings reading instead of balancing bills at the kitchen table. And I had discovered that the most meaningful investments were the ones made in people. We sat once again near the window where it had all begun. Noah wore another paper crown, though this year it was gold instead of silver. Claire wore a deep blue dress, simple and elegant, with the same silver necklace catching the candlelight. She still looked at me with the same kindness that had undone me on the loneliest night of my life. "You are awfully quiet," she said, smiling over her champagne glass. "That is usually a sign you are planning something." Noah gasped. "Are we getting dessert?" I laughed. Something even better. My heart pounded with a nervousness I had never felt in any boardroom. I reached into my jacket pocket and touched the small velvet box I had carried all evening. The countdown clock above the bar began its final 60 seconds. 1 year ago, I had arrived as a stranger with nowhere to sit. Tonight, I was surrounded by the only 2 people who had ever made me feel truly at home. At 10 seconds, I stood and stepped beside Claire's chair. Her eyes widened. Noah clapped both hands over his mouth. At midnight, as confetti drifted through the air and the room erupted in cheers, I lowered myself to one knee. "Claire," I said, my voice unsteady with emotion. "The night you waved me to your table, you gave me something no amount of money could buy. You gave me a place to belong." Tears filled her eyes. Noah bounced in his seat, barely able to contain himself. I looked at them both. "Claire Bennett, will you marry me and let me spend the rest of my life loving you and Noah as my family?" For one suspended heartbeat, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then Claire nodded through tears and whispered the most beautiful word I had ever heard. Yes. Noah launched himself into my arms. Claire followed, and the three of us held each other while fireworks lit the sky beyond the windows. They once said Adrian Moretti could buy anything he wanted. They were wrong. The most valuable things in life are never purchased. They are offered with a simple wave, an empty chair, and a heart brave enough to say, "You do not have to be alone tonight."